Hey, Sully, how are you?
What's happening, man? You gonna get some cameo? You gonna get some cameo on the radio show today for Middle St. Augustine?
I should be arriving. I'm actually going to jump in my car as soon as we're done here and head down there. So I should be arriving maybe fashionably late, maybe midway through the first quarter. A little early morning basketball at the Seagull Classic, but an interesting game. Middle coming off a big win over St. Joe this week at St. Joe, and St. Augustine, off to a 5-1 start, winning that tournament out in California with Marlon Hargis getting the MVP award. And that's one of the Cape Atlantic League's old-time rivalries, Middle Township versus St. Augustine. So a good game at 10:30 in the morning on a freezing cold day. What else you going to do? Go inside, get warm, and watch some good hoops.
Yeah, man, the Hermits, they're going to be in for a dogfight here. Like you said, Middle Township's been playing well, and that's a really big win to go on the road and beat St. Joe, which I believe was undefeated before that.
Yeah, St. Joe was 5-0, and they had just won a tournament up in North Jersey, beating Immaculata and a really good win over a Point Pleasant Beach team, that figured to be, as annually one of the better teams in the Shore Conference. So, Middle Township goes on the road, gets a big effort out of Jalen Freeman and is able to win that game. And it just goes to show you what I think is going to happen this season. That Cape Atlantic League United Division, which has the smallest schools in the league and has kind of been looked down upon as maybe the poor stepchild to the other two divisions. I think that's a really good division this year with Wildwood Catholic, St. Joe, Pleasantville, Middle Township, and even Cape May Tech and Buna. So I think those teams are going to kind of take turns beating up on each other all season long, and it started last Tuesday night with Middle's win over St. Joe.
Yeah, you might see a conference championship with 3 or 4 losses in a division like that where they're kind of beating up on each other all winter long.
Well, I think what you might see, I think Wildwood Catholic might be the class of the division, at least so far from what we've seen. And I think the top 2 teams in each division make that Cape Atlantic League tournament. I think the fight for that second spot is going to be really something to watch, and it's going to be one of those themes that we follow the rest of the season.
I think the big thing is you're going to have to go on the road and get a couple of wins like Middle Township did against St. Joe, so that really puts them in a good position, at least at this point.
Yeah, and going on the road in that division is not easy because you've kind of got some of the more unique gyms in the league. St. Joe is a unique gym. Wildwood Catholic is a unique gym. Pleasantville is a tough place to play. Pleasantville going down to Wildwood Catholic next Friday night, that's an interesting game to watch. So, like you said, you got to go on the road and win. But, those gyms in that division have some character. They're kind of old-time gyms. And not so easy, not walking into one of these spacious Group 4 school gyms, with, you're walking into some bandboxes in that Cape Atlantic League United Division.
Talking with Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City. And Mike, give us some of your thoughts on the Seagull Classic. I'm sure you remember when it was a big deal, right?
Well, actually, it ended right before I started.
Oh, it did? Okay.
A long time ago. Yeah, the last year was 1990. I started at the Press, excuse me, in 1990. I moved to sports in 1993, so I just missed it. What I do remember is that around our office, we used to have all these Seagull programs, basically, and sometimes I would, look at them and see some of the players who played it. I think it's a great idea to bring it back. I think it's a great time to sort of bring it back too. It's kind of, this is the first weekend after Christmas, kind of everybody's kind of returning back to the grind after holidays. And I just think it's great that you can go to Holy Spirit. And like you said, you can see Middle and St. Augustine today. You can see, Wildwood, Lower Cape May. You can see the mainland girls versus Gloucester Catholic girls. You can get a look at Linden, the state Group 4 champs. You can get a look at St. Joe. We talked about them versus Eustis later today. Tomorrow you get Wildwood Catholic boys versus Lenape, AC boys versus Camden Catholic. See the Patrick School. You can go to one place on one weekend, and early in the season, you can kind of get a gauge on how, 7, 8, 9, 10 top teams are playing and get a gauge on them and get a read on them. So for me, I love it because you can go there and get a read on 10 teams, talk to a lot of people, and you get a handle on how teams are playing early in the season. And you got to go to one gym to do it. If you tried to do that and this event wasn't happening, you'd be out every night of the week trying to see 2 to 3 games. So that's what I like about it. You can get a really good sense of where teams are early in the season by on one weekend at one gym.
And Mike, man, you mentioned some of those matchups, and if you're a basketball fan in New Jersey, you're looking at the schedule going, wow, man, I got to carve some time out of my weekend to at least get to one or two of these games.
Yeah, well, anytime, like you said, but another thing, anytime you can get a handle on Linden, the defending state Group 4 champs, get a look at them, get a look at the Patrick School last season's Tournament of Champions winners. Tomorrow, AC versus Camden Catholic is a big game. Wildwood Catholic versus Lenape. Wildwood Catholic playing a Group 4 power. Very good game. Today, at noon, right after this Middle St. Augustine game, the Mainland girls, 5-0. We have the number 1 in our Elite 11 playing a Gloucester Catholic, a perennial power. It should be a great test for Mainland. So, like you said, a lot of good early season games over there at the Seagull.
Now, Mike, Cole Raring said he could probably pull some strings, get you a room over in Atlantic City tonight, make a weekend out of it.
That's okay. I'm used to not a bad idea, but I'm used to making that trip back up and down the Parkway, late night tonight and back down there early tomorrow for a new game. I think the Ocean City Girls, another great game. Ocean City Girls, we thought what's going to happen to them? They graduated a lot of standouts from last year's team. All of a sudden, they're 5-0, 6-0 off to a great start, and they play Lenape, another solid, a very good Group 4 team. So, we'll get a sense of what the Ocean City Girls are all about this weekend. So I'm used to up and down the Parkway with a little radio and the heat blasting in the car, and I'll be fine.
You're not going to hit up Wild Wild West Casino tonight?
Nah, not at all. Save your money. I have to save my money for the snack stand at a Holy Spirit. So.
Yeah, what do you think of this waking up when it's 6 degrees out?
I'm not a fan. So, I'm not a fan at all.
You're like, when's my next trip out to L.A.?
Yeah, it's very, but I think at the end of the week it's going to be about 40 degrees or 50 degrees. People will be wearing shorts out because they'll think it's about 80. So
right.
After what we've been through. I'm also not a fan of snow. We had about 18 inches up here, and I'm also not a fan of that, so. And plus, it wreaks havoc with the schedule. You had a great game last night. Wildwood Catholic and AC boys kind of blown out by the weather. So, I'd rather, if it could be sunny and about 50 every day, I'd take that through the winter.
I can picture you negotiating with one of these neighborhood kids to shovel the driveway, trying to drive the price down.
I'm out there myself. I get out there myself, and you gotta. I get out there and do it all. Dig out the mailbox, pass down the sidewalks, everything. The whole 9 yards, all me.
The wife just wants you out of the house for a couple hours. That's what it is.
Probably.
So, Mike, as we start looking forward here into January, give us some sense of what you're thinking about for Cape Atlantic League basketball. Obviously, it's not going to be too long until we start talking about the Cape Atlantic League tournament. And any surprises so far in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season?
Well, I think the one thing that kind of that sticks out to me, and I had bumped into the Haddonfield boys coach, Paul Wiedemann, over the holiday break, and he came up to me and he said the first thing he said was, wow, the Cape Atlantic League is really good this year. And I think the depth of teams in that Cape Atlantic League is really what has kind of stood out so far early in the season. You've got Atlantic City, St. Augustine, Millville playing very well in that American division. Lower Cape May, Mainland, Holy Spirit, Ocean City, playing well in that national division. And then we talked about the United Division. So you literally have, I think, for the 8-team tournament, I think you got 10, 11, maybe 12 legitimate teams fighting for those 8 spots. So I think the battle to see who gets in the tournament is going to be something to follow. And I think that's why, every game matters in the Cape Atlantic League really big. I think you look at Pleasantville's win over Egg Harbor Township on the second game of the season. That's a nice win for the Greyhounds to put on their resume. I think, games like that kind of, Pleasantville winning over Holy Spirit at the Southern Regional Tournament, and Pleasantville playing Holy Spirit to finish up the Seagull Classic tomorrow night. These are all big games that are going to be on teams' resumes as they fight for spots in that Cape Atlantic League tournament. So I say the one thing on the boys' side is the depth of talent in the Cape Atlantic League. And like I said, I saw the Haddonfield coach, Paul Wiedemann, and he said, boy, that Cape Atlantic League has got some really good teams this year, and I think it's going to be fun for us to sort of follow that all season long.
And one of the cool things on the girls' side, Mike, is it's not going to be a cakewalk for a team like Mainland. I mean, you're talking about Ocean City's off to an undefeated start. Wildwood Catholic. There's some other teams in there that can really challenge them as far as that Cal tournament goes.
Yeah, you talk about the Wildwood Catholic today. Co-worker John Russo, wrote a nice story about that Wildwood Catholic freshman girl who's averaging over 20 points a game, and she's kind of come into the league and sort of created a sensation right there. And you're right. You look at Mainland girls played Absegami earlier this season, and it was a close game right to the end. So, they're going to be challenged there with a lot of interesting games in that division. And you're going to see the other thing you're going to see on the girls' side is Atlantic City get some of those transfers ready to go.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see what the Vikings are like when they're when they're at full strength.
Yeah, I mean they're basically welcoming in two number one players or number one or number two type players from two other programs.
Right, and so and they've been pretty good so far this season. Though they didn't play over the Christmas break, but they got off to a good start this season. So you add two players like that. I believe the girl from ACIT, Tahara, I think it's Anderson. Is that correct?
Howard,
right. You add a player like that, and it's going to be interesting to see what the Vikings are like, once they're at full strength. And you've got a Millville team that's gotten off to a decent start and already very strong in that division.
Millville boys too. I mean, we haven't really talked too much about them, Mike, but they got a nice team. I saw them against Ocean City down at the Boardwalk Classic, and that Lawrence kid, man, he could fill up the stat sheet.
Yeah, right now Lawrence, one of the more underrated players in South Jersey, is approaching 1,000 points, and I think he's on pace to sort of take a shot at becoming Millville's all-time career scoring leader. So he's off to an excellent start. And like you said, their only loss was to St. Augustine in the second game of the season. Other than that, they've kind of made a name for themselves and played well. They played well last year. And like you said, Rhinell Lawrence is a player to watch in South Jersey, closing in on 1,000 points. And again, that's when we talk about the depth of the Cape Atlantic League. You look at that American division and your eyes go right to Atlantic City and St. Augustine. But Millville, quietly right there, maybe a step below those teams, but certainly a contender in the Cape Atlantic League and in South Jersey Group 4.
Good stuff as always, Mike. We'll let you get going. I know you got to get on the road, but we'll have plenty to talk about the next 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the time of the year when, these January games, like we said, these January games define a team's season. So a lot of times people like to look to the state tournament and the Cape Atlantic League tournament and some of those big events in February. But these January games are really kind of what determines what teams do on the season. So, like you said, good time of the year. Let's just hope it warms up a little bit for us.
Stock up on those Diet Cokes, man. We need your A game the next 6 weeks.
All right, I'll see what I can do. Thanks, Sully.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, bud.
Bye-bye.
That was Mike McGarry, press of Atlantic City.